any group that has the current world champions is a wonderful group to, I suppose, analyse, to discuss, to have a good look at. Germany are the favourites obviously for this group. They're 5-1 favourites for the tournament, and I expect under Jogi Löw that they will perform at a supreme standard during the tournament. They also have the benefit over some other teams of playing in the Confederations Cup last summer. I know there's the whole hoodoo of winning the Confederations Cup and then going on to win the World Cup, and it doesn't happen too often, but I think Germany having that insight and that tournament, I suppose, know-how, it will set them up in good stead going into their first match, which is against Mexico. Germany, I suppose, they won the Confederations Cup. They were excellent in 2017. They didn't lose a match. In terms of their last 3 matches in preparation for the tournament, they've lost 2 of them to Brazil and to Austria, surprisingly, I suppose, and they've drawn against Spain. Now, how much do we read into that, I suppose, is to be thought about or considered. I still think that they're one of the favourites for the competition, and they'll go very far in Russia. You only need to take a look at their squad, at the player that they've left out in Leroy Sané, who all of the supporters of the Premier League seem to be dismayed and, I suppose, sad about, that they're not going to get to see his brilliance that he sometimes has shown this year in the Premier League. But look at their players, look at their goalkeeper in Manuel Neuer, look at their centre halves, Matt Hummels, look at their midfield in Toni Kroos, and their attackers in Mario Gomez, and don't forget, of course, the Arsenal maestro that is Mesut Ozil. Of course, how fit is Mesut, what frame of mind is he, and that will obviously dictate largely how well this German team get on in Russia. But as I say, they'll finish top of this group comfortably, and in their first game they finish second place. They start their campaign against the second favourites for the group, and that team is Mexico. Now, Mexico have had a quite eventful, I suppose, preparation, with a number of team members having to meet up with their wives and significant others to discuss their futures together. Well, I suppose their futures may be, more secure if Mexico were to go on and this was to propel them towards success and to go beyond the last 16, which they haven't been able to do at the last 6 World Cups that they have been involved in. The player obviously to look out for here for Mexico is Javier Hernandez. He didn't have a great season for West Ham United, but he improved as the season went on, and he actually became quite a significant player, coming on and getting some crucial goals for West Ham. Looking at their midfield, then you've got Giovanni Dos Santos, for example. You've also got Rafael Marquez, an absolute stalwart of Mexican football, one of their greatest players. He's been described as in Mexican media, and that I've looked at in preparation for the World Cup. And it's interesting to see where will he play in qualifying. He's largely been played at a defensive midfield position. Will he have the legs to get round the pitch against some of the likes of Emil Forsberg and the likes of Mesut Ozil and Toni Kroos that he'll have to face when he plays Sweden and Germany respectively. Of course, Son, for South Korea, don't forget that absolute genius who plays for, Sweden are the team that I fancy will finish second in the group. Mexico are the favourites to finish second. I fancy Sweden personally. The reason being is that they've got a number of strong players. They've got Jorgensen, for example, who had quite a superb season for Premier League debutants Huddersfield. They also have Granqvist, who's obviously their key player at the back and centre half position. They've got Emil Forsberg of RB Leipzig, who had a superb season 2 seasons ago, was a little bit slower this season and not as, not performing to his standard, but I think he'll come good in the World Cup. Don't forget that this team actually beat Italy in the playoffs to get to the World Cup, which was a shocker. And yes, all those crying faces for Gigi Buffon that he would be robbed of his opportunity to play at the World Cup, but ultimately they would have been fearful for the welfare and the well-being of any referee that Gigi Buffon came into contact with during the tournament. I must say, for Sweden, Jan Andersson, their manager, has rebuilt a team that was dictated to largely by Ibrahimovic over the last couple of tournaments that they've been at, and he's built a very solid unit, and they've got great team spirit, perhaps more so than they would have had when Ibrahimovic was playing. So look out for the team. They haven't had a great introduction in terms of their preparation. They've lost 2 games against Chile and Romania, and they drew against Denmark, so it's not a great start, but neither have Germany had a great preparation for the tournament. So don't read into it too much, and hopefully Sweden will come up trumps second place. Now, if they get second, likelihood is they're going to play first from Group A, and that will be Brazil. So good luck to them. You know, Grankvist and Jorgensen will have to be quite strong against Brazil, you'd have to say, you know, against Bobby Firmino and Philip Coutinho. Finally, last but yes, by all means least, it's South Korea, because ultimately, you know, they're 250 to 1 to win the World Cup. I just don't see that happening. So any punters out there like myself of a Saturday who stick on a 16 team accumulator, don't even think about putting a bet on South Korea. Obviously the names that we would be familiar with would be Son of Spurs, Key of Swansea, who's been linked with AC Milan of late, and also Lee Chung-young of Crystal Palace, who doesn't really get a game with the London side. Son is a player who can score goals, who's done very well for Tottenham over recent years. He's probably been one of their most reliable players, and I would say if they're to have any chance, as slim as it may be, it will be with a Son who is delivering to the best of his ability. You know, they came 4th place in 2002, let's not forget that, you know, but this squad just doesn't have the know-how nor the ability to replicate that, and since 2002 when they finished 4th, they've only won 2 World Cup games, and they've played at every World Cup since that. So, Group F, in conclusion, I fancy Germany to win the group, and to finish second, Sweden.